Waxers, and welcome to Wax and Lyrical with Mains and Dut. I'm your host Mains, and my colleague still trying to figure out if it was actually legal for England to comfortably make a final in a major sporting tournament, Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
It's hit and giggle pyjama rubbish.
No, but in a serious sense, Dutton, is that the most comfortable you've ever been in any sport related to England in a knockout game?
Oh yeah,
which is
not even close.
Which is frightening. It was not England. I'm not. I mean, we say it's not England, and hilarity ensues as the best player is Jason Roy, and he gets interviewed, and I'm like, Cape Town again. He sounds English. Not
Jason Roy of the Rovers.
Jason Roy, Josh Butler. My granddad may name other players who weren't English who are, but anyway, we'll move on because we don't want to get.
Butler's English.
I thought Butler was Australian.
No, Butler's from Somerset. He's a yokel.
Oh, I didn't realise. I thought that stupid accent was Australian, not Sada Scrumpy.
In the interest of people seeking revenge, I should point out that Mainsy lives closer to the good people of Somerset than I do. So if you wish to go and
is that true though? Like in a other side of the country, so you're probably true. But I have to go over the M25. I guarantee it'd be quicker for you to get there.
Yeah, Taunton.
I used to live in Taunton, drive, but that was in Liverpool, completely different.
Yeah, he's from Taunton. He was born in Taunton. Birthday's 5 days after yours.
Well, there we go. The 8th of September, good on. Taunton, complete sidetrack.
Yeah.
This week...
Izzard-esque tangent.
Izzard-esque tangent, yeah. This week, standard Weird World, got a couple of classics. One just genius, and the other shedding some light on an ongoing discussion that has happened in the Twitter sphere with us, and including my fiance. We have Barry Cass of Toffee TV and the MLS show. I promise not to be as anti-Everton as it could be. We brought Barry on obviously due to the sad loss of Johan Cruyff, one of the greatest players of all time. We thought we'd get someone else into the mix to join that discussion. And then Dutton, we're going to have the brilliant Liz Loza on from Yahoo Fancy Football. A lady who'd rather dress as Ryan Sandberg than a princess, but we'll ask her about that. What we won't ask her about is sucking toes. It'll all become clear a bit later on in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So,
nor do we want our toes sucked.
No.
I don't.
I don't. It's not my scene. You need to see Fergie, was that? That was Princess... Yeah? Fergie, right?
I don't know. I know David Mellor apparently had a penchant for it, but I don't think with Fergie.
What a scary thought. Again, tangent that we just need to walk away quickly from.
Yeah. Please.
2 interviews. Dutton. It's going to be brilliant. Lots of talk, lots of chat, lots of sport, but we don't start the show with anything other than Weird World. First story, Dutton. I think the title says it all, really. Man loses leg shooting rifle at lawnmower packed with explosives. This one will get tweeted out, Dutton, as it has a video. So
of him doing
of him doing it and his leg blowing off. Gruesome video footage has surfaced showing the moment a Georgia daredevil, quote, that's I put inverted commas there, the Washington Post didn't, I have, lost his leg shooting a semi-automatic rifle at a lawnmower packed with several pounds of deadly explosives. There's a multitude of questions at this point that I would like to ask. I mean, I'm not sure why you need a semi-automatic rifle or a rifle at all, but you're in America, okay, we'll let you go. Why are you shooting it at a lawnmower? Is your lawnmower not cut the grass sufficiently well enough? And why is you not only you shooting at a lawnmower, but why are you shooting at a lawnmower packed with several pounds of deadly explosives?
Now, there is a theory, that some people, who are too lazy to catch fish, instead of going with fishing rods to, a lake or a pond or wherever it is you go fishing, will instead just throw hand grenades in and then just take the fish out that are dead after that. Maybe this fella couldn't be bothered cutting the grass, so he thought, well, if I blow up the garden instead, I won't have to cut it, and then the missus will stop nagging me to do it. So he thought, well, I'll load it up, I'll tool her up, but then it's like, I haven't got a match or a detonator. Well, I know bullets are a good thing, and clearly he didn't stand far enough back.
So this is the thing. It looks in the video you can see the lawnmower, so it's maybe 30 yards away. Several pounds of explosives. I'm reading here that it was tannerite, a mixture of ammonium nitrate and aluminum powder that explodes when struck by a high velocity bullet. Bullet is normally used for target practice. The product's website instructs users not to place tannerite inside, under or near any type of metal objects. I'm assuming that a lawnmower has metal bits. And for every pound of tannerite, experts advise standing 100 yards away.
So there was, 7 pounds of tannerite?
Several we've got, and I haven't got an exact figure here, but believe you me, I'm looking at the picture. I can see the lawnmower. So it's at best 50.
Right, so he's... Right, okay.
I'm not going to play the video now to hear the screams of Presley yelling, "I blew off my leg."
Well,
This is, if people aren't aware, this is a Darwin Award nominee. Unfortunately, this guy survived, so not full able to do it, but proved that
honourable mention.
He gets an honourable mention, as he thought it was a good idea in his tiny brain to shoot a lawnmower packed with explosives.
I mean, buying this highly flammable substance, hey Prez, how's it going? Oh, it's all right. What are you buying this for? See you next week. You know what I mean? There's no questioning's gone on. No, you can't put it in your lawnmower. Yeah, I can.
I can do whatever I want, because I have multiple amendments in the Constitution that allow me to do so.
Yeah.
Bravo, America. It's not 1776 anymore. Dutton, you know and I know that my fiancée has a love of the unicorn. And we know that she's baited regularly on Twitter by Giggling Craig about said unicorn situation. Kate is in watching Dirty Dancing at the moment in the theatre, but I thought this one would cheer her up, because I found a story on the Huffington Post website. Unicorns and humans once walked the earth together, sort of.
No, they didn't.
First, the good news. There really was once living, breathing, I'm using inverted commas again, Dutton, for the people who are listening, unicorns walking around the earth, specifically in what is now Kazakhstan. The bad news, they weren't cute, cuddly, magical creatures that all children, and lots of adults, I include Kate for this, love and cherish. Researchers from Tomsk State University in Russia, I don't know where Tomsk is, anyway,
all right,
recently analysed the well-preserved skull fossils of something with massive Latin words, also known as the Siberian unicorn, that was unearthed in Pavlodar region of Kazakhstan. Scientists previously thought the species went extinct some 350,000 years ago, but now researchers analysed, they found could only be 29,000 years ago. I'm just going to elaborate now, people. So what they've done is, this is for people of a certain persuasion, they've found that this bone existed 29,000 years ago. Not like 2,000 years ago that a book you may have read suggests may have happened. Just moving on. So we walk the earth, not we, me and you, maybe our dads. And unicorns existed, Dutton. It's basically a rhinoceros with a big horn.
See, I'm...
Hairy rhinoceros.
A big hairy rhino. The thing that worries me is Kazakhstan, aside from producing some excellent beluga caviar, is known in the 21st century for one thing: Borat.
But it's not that. But he's not.
This
it's not. No. He's known in the UK and the US for Borat, who is Sacha Baron Cohen, Cambridge educated, not dude from Kazakhstan.
This sounds like a very well thought out plot for Borat 2.
Well, he did that. What's the new one he's done? The
Grimsby,
which looks horrific. I mean, I hate all of those. Like, I remember going, like, was it me and you? We went to watch a film and he had the trailer for Borat, and the trailer was him singing the national anthem at the bull fighting, and he just gets all the words wrong. Like, I had to walk out the cinema, and that was a trailer. The thought of watching 90 minutes of that garbage just fills me with dread.
Speaking of, garbage, I would rather shoot a lawnmower filled with several pounds of explosives than watch Dirty Dancing, the musical.
I've never seen Dirty Dancing, the film. I don't know why I want to see Dirty Dancing, the musical.
I've never been more jealous of you in my life to have not seen that hideous piece of crap.
See, that's a sister thing, right? We both got sisters. Was that your sister's film?
Yeah, give her a due. My sister Nikki, she did. She would let us watch other things, but that was watched several times. Yeah.
See, my sister was Sound of Music on that. So, like, in theory, especially for the first hour and a half, I know as much words in that film as Julie Andrews does. You know what I mean? Which is a scary thought. She does sing better than me though.
No, everyone sings better than you.
Apart from my dad. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it's called The Sound of Music when really it could be called Nuns and Nazis. That could be the byline.
I believe.
The Sound of Music.
I believe on the screenplay it was called Nuns and Nazis, but Disney weren't sure that would sell as well as The Sound of Music.
Yeah, it was directed by Robert Wise, I believe, who also directed one of the Star Trek films. So there's your link. Not as much singing in Star Trek.
Not for the want of Bill Shatner trying, though.
No, it wasn't obviously the epic Star Trek where they do sing "Row Your Boat" in Star Trek V. That wasn't directed by Robert Wise. That was Bill Shatner.
Is that Star Trek Goes to Earth?
No, that's Star Trek 4.
Star Trek with Wales. That's that one.
Star Trek with Wales. That was Leonard Nimoy directed.
That was jobs for the boys section of the Star Trek genre. Sorry, Sam and J.J. Abrams here. Damn Trekkers.
Well, they actually did have a clause in the contract that whatever Shatner got, Nimoy got, and whatever Nimoy got, Shatner got. So if Nimoy got offered the chance to direct a film, Shatner would get offered the chance to direct a film.
Duncan Ferguson, bringing it back because we're just about to have Barry Cass. Duncan Ferguson had that in his contract at Everton, that he had to be the highest paid footballer at Everton Football Club.
Yeah. So did you see the squad they had? I would have expected to have been the highest paid football.
I'm going to do this now, right? I'm going to do this now because Barry's not on the show. And I'm just going to get it out there. And I know Andy Green, I know you're listening. And I understand your love for the man. I do understand. I do understand it. He was not a good footballer. Not a good footballer. He was on football pitches and fights broke out. Sorry, he was in fights and football games broke out. He didn't score many goals. And I know we loved that header. Well, you loved that header in the 1992 derby from the Hinchcliffe corner, but that was one goal. One 94. Goal.
94.
Whatever. Stupid Dogs of War, Fathead Joe Royle, and that awful football team. He was a mediocre footballer at best. And to suggest that he's like Everton's best ever striker, that some people have argued in the past, Liam Gibbons, I'm looking at you. That's ridiculous. He hasn't got. Romelu Lukaku has got more skill and ability in his big left toe than Duncan Ferguson had in his whole body.
It is a big left toe as well.
Just because he's got a stupid Everton tattoo on his arm does not make him good at football or a hero. Sorry. Do you know what, Dutton? Now seems like a perfect time that I've got that out of the way, that we can talk to someone about, well, we will mention Everton, and I will try and be as polite as possible.
I think you should.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring you Barry Cass of Toffee TV and the MLS show. Dutton, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're all aware, unfortunately, we lost Johan Cruyff late last week. Terrible news, and me and Dutton wanted to talk about it, so we thought we need to get a football expert on the show, and we only have two Scouse voices usually on the show, so we thought we needed to increase the Scouseness of Waxing Lyrical Mains and Duts. So we got Barry Cass from Toffee TV and the MLS show on the line. Baz, how are we today?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Paul.
Good.
Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. We just wanted to get you on to give your thoughts, because we needed a football expert, because we just talk about it and pretend to know what we're talking about.
And you couldn't get anyone, so you got me. That's cool. Yeah, obviously it was horrible news, wasn't it, last week? Seems to be the year for it, doesn't it, at the moment? So I hope this trend stops very quickly.
I'm just this horrible feeling that Bruce Forsyth is sucking the life out of everyone so he can carry on, but we're losing everyone else.
I think I'll leave that where you put it, Neil. I don't think I want to get involved in having a go with Bruce on this one. No, back to obviously to Johan Cruyff. It was horrible news. I mean, you know, such a revered character, not only footballer, obviously coach. What he done at Barcelona as well, absolutely incredible. And you know, it's sad when you see these icons, you know, passing on, isn't it? Because we're all aware of the Cruyff turn. You know, it was nice to see Harry Kane executing it in super slow motion for us all last week against Germany. It was brilliant how slow he turned there with that Cruyff turn. But no, it's, you know, it's difficult to kind of encapsulate all in one word. But he was quite simply a genius.
Do you think, Barry, that, you know, people talk about when the conversation of like the best players ever, Pele gets mentioned, Maradona, Cruyff to an extent is almost like, you know, the part of the castle that isn't shown to visitors. It just seems to get forgotten. But I mean, as I say, what Maradona did and what Pele done, they haven't got a turn named after them. So, you know, do people not fully appreciate the impact that Cruyff did have on the game as a player?
I think there's definitely an element of truth in that. I think often with these kind of things, it's after they pass on, isn't it, that people start to look at them and go, what a player he was. I mean, obviously Pele, coming from a time when, you know, you've only seen the Brazilians at major tournaments, you know, they didn't move into Europe. Obviously football wasn't available as easily as it is now. So he was obviously revered for his World Cup stuff. Moving on, Maradona, similarly, obviously until he went to Italy and tore it up with Napoli. And there was something almost mystical about those two players coming from the other side of the world and lighting up World Cups. But Cruyff done it from a European perspective, and he done it brilliantly in Holland. Like you say, he's got a turn named after him. And unlike the other two, he done it in coaching, on a coaching level, you know, and he loved smoking cigarettes, didn't he, as well? He smoked ridiculous amounts as well, and was still fantastic. So I think there's definitely an element of truth in that, in terms of where you hold them up, because it's always Pele, Maradona, and Messi is thrown in. I mean, we had obviously from you know, not these shores, but Ireland, obviously George Best was another one who was fantastic, and people would look back and remember him as a fantastic player, but not in the level of kind of what Maradona and Pele are revered to. My dad always says that Best was unbelievable. You know, he was probably on his day up there with them, not necessarily better than them, but held up there with them. And I think Cruyff is another one like that, where it's easy to forget just how good he was. And obviously for us, you know, I'm obviously a little bit older than you two, but I don't know, Neil, it looks like you're catching me up, I'll be honest, on that picture. But you know, I kind of only remember him right at the very end, and then obviously seeing videotape and stuff. But what a player he was, and his legacy is still there at Barcelona now, because he was very much the forerunner in youth development and a way of playing and a way of coaching, and that obviously Rijkaard took on, and we see with Guardiola, and we're seeing again today now with Luis Enrique.
Is that? I mean, that's the next question, really, Baz. Is that, do people in the UK actually fully understand the revolutionary impact Johan Cruyff had at Barcelona, not just as a player when he went there, but then subsequently as a manager, and even when he left, just as a person commenting on Barcelona and what he's actually done for that football club?
I think it's passed over. I think we're certainly in this country, it's everything's about the now, isn't it? You know, and I think people will only look back as far as Guardiola, I would say. But Cruyff was so instrumental at Barca. You know, he was there as a player, he was there as a coach, and what he done, you know, in terms of, he was there, wasn't he, 8 years? How he changed that club in terms of how they produced their own players, working with the ball, how you develop young players. You know, don't forget, he was at Barcelona at a time when Real Madrid were kind of dominating, and so he had to almost unpick a lot of stuff that was going on there as well, and really get the next kind of revolution to come through. And commenting on it after it and hearing him speak about it, you know, at times when it wasn't going so well as well, you looked and thought, this is a fella who obviously cares very much about Barcelona, but he was so far-reaching. He had so much insight into the game, understood the game. You know, you go back to his time at Ajax, and obviously coming through, we still talk about the Ajax model now, don't we? You know, that's still a model that people kind of try to focus their academy on. So he was very much instrumental in taking that over to Barcelona, if you like, and giving them a different way of doing things at La Masia.
It's that kind of concept that I think people look now, and as you said, they look at Guardiola and they see Barcelona as this European powerhouse who they think are going to win the European Cup every year. The first time they won the European Cup was under Cruyff in '92 at Wembley against Sampdoria.
Wembley, yeah.
Like, Koeman scores that goal. Another Dutch guy, obviously now more known in recent times as being a manager of Southampton, but was one of the best centre-halves on the planet. It's that kind of concept that it's the same kind of idea. It's that now mentality. People don't really understand why it's took City a few years to get really into the Champions League. Everyone forgets that. It took Manchester United from when they started playing back in it in 92, 93, 94. They got absolutely torn apart by Barcelona. The Romario, Stoichkov, Baquero, Guardiola team 4-0 at the Nou Camp in one of which could have been 10. I mean, people don't remember that kind of concept of those type of teams.
No, definitely not. I mean, don't forget, he won the Liga. I think it was it 4 times on the run, yeah, from 90 or 91 to 94. The players that I wrote down before, the players he brought in: Pep Guardiola, Jose Maria Baquero, Trixie Bergestan, who's obviously has been involved on the other side of that, the playing, Goycochea, Koeman, Laudrup, Romario, Hadji, Stoichkov. You know, the names that to a certain age of football fan, they are just like, wow, you know, reeling off the tongue. To others, they'll be scratching their head going, yeah, but he's not as good as Neymar. But, you know, those kind of, well, you know, that's how short. And what we certainly have over here is, and probably everywhere, to be honest, but obviously I can only comment over here, is we have this incredible knack of rewriting history once things happen, you know, as we move on and people aren't as good as what they were. But he was just incredible. I mean, you're talking about, I remember that night at Wembley with Koeman's free kick, you know, to win them the European Cup when it was a real cup, when it wasn't a blag trophy full of money and boring games like it is now. You know, and to do what he done is just incredible, and just what a fella. I mean, iconic, you know, and we're running out of people who are iconic. I mean, can you look now and look at a modern day footballer and say, well, you know, if you had to pick one, can you think of one that would make such an impact on a club after he finishes playing? Because there's a different breed of footballer nowadays. I
mean, that's the thing, you know. You hear Lionel. I don't think, even in interviews maybe for El Clasico that's coming up, I don't even think I've ever heard Lionel Messi speak. Whereas, like, Johan Cruyff was the most outspoken player on the planet. So he said stuff, people listened. I mean, he basically just refused to go to a World Cup in 1978 for a multitude of reasons, which are still in folklore somewhere, related to either sexual innuendo or Argentinian mafia or whatever. And like that, the thought of someone saying, "Oh, we've got the Euros or the World Cup coming up, and if it's the World Cup, Messi's decided he's not going to play because he doesn't want to." The world had stopped on his axis right now if that kind of concept happened. But that's what happened in '78, and that Dutch team still got to the final.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. He was outspoken. He stood up for what he believed in. He didn't care what impact it had. He was very much like Dutch people anyway, wasn't he? Quite straight, they like that anyway. He loved to talk. He loved to talk. He was controversial when he felt he needed to be. So he had all of that. He was just such a massive, massive character, and you could probably go all night about different things that he'd done throughout his career. You could go and look at folklore and everything else. He ended up being named the president of Barcelona, honorary president and everything. That's how much of an impact he made on their club, as a Dutchman, not even as a Spaniard. So just probably everything about him, and when you see that orange shirt with the 14 on the back, you know exactly who it is.
I mean, just a quick thing. I mean, obviously he's associated with the Holland team and the concept of total football, but the idea being that every player on the pitch is so comfortable on the ball they could play anywhere. Your right back could play left side of midfield, or he could play in what's now called the 10 role. He could play up front. Speaking as fans of English football, as we say, I mean, me and Mainsy have said in the past, English football is never more than 7 passes away from a hoof. It's the idea that he was just able to ingrain in these people the respect for the football, to make sure that it went to someone wearing the same colour shirt as you, and not to waste it. Whereas, and obviously he took that forward as a coach, where a lot of English managers, it's still we can't score from here, it's got to get in the box, and it was just. To the idea, that it sounds so simple, just pass the ball, move past the ball. And, obviously the other teams from across the park tried that to an extent in like the 80s, but such a simple idea, but he had the vision and the courage of his convictions to push it through and produce the teams, as I say, with the players that we've talked about. Yeah,
well, we've got a fella in charge at the moment, mate, that passes it for the sake of passing it, and it's boring. As obviously as an Evertonian, I think I'd be made up with every 7th pass we knocked it into the box. We're made up with 600 passes regardless of the result at Everton at the moment. I think, listen, there's a way to play. Everyone's got their own ideal, haven't they, of how to play the game. The right way to play is the winning way, because at the end of the day, if you're not winning football matches, what's the point? Winning without results is pointless. I think that's a Johan Cruyff saying. And he knew how to do it, but he had the players to do it and the team to do it. Very much like Guardiola, I suppose at Barca. That was total football. That was small-sided matches all over the pitch. If they'd link up and play X amount of passes, they'd be given a certain amount of time to win the ball back. They never crossed the football. It was seen as a waste. So he's took that on to another level, and that's great with the players you've got. I think in this country, we are a different breed anyway in terms of what we like. I think as football fans, we love a good tackle. We love a strong tackle in this country. We like balls into the box, don't we? We like crosses. I'm not sure whether Johan Cruyff's style would have suited everybody, in terms of watching it. But if you put players like Romario and Stoichkov and people like that loads up, and you've got those kind of players in your team who are playing 50 passes with the ball and caressing it, you're going to enjoy it because they'll be an end product. And I think that's the key thing. What he done, his teams had an end product. He would have been chased out to Barcelona had he not got the results that he got. Don't forget, So he was able to not only pass the ball fantastically well, he was able to win. And that was the key thing. He was able to win. And he brought them the first European Cup. You know, they haven't looked back really, have they?
Obviously, Cruyff, at the end of his career, did have a spell in what was then called the North American Soccer League, which brings us nicely, this is a wonderful segue.
Seamless link.
That's just beautiful. I'm impressed with myself.
Yeah.
You're obviously, a big fan of Major League Soccer, the MLS.
Yeah.
I watched the first game of the season. I think it was New York City against Chicago. I think it was.
Yeah.
I could enjoy that because it didn't look like either team wanted to could be arsed defended. So it was that looked good. How have the players that we're more familiar with, the Gerrards, the Lampards, the Pirlo, how are they settling in, and do they look out of place? Are they adding anything to it, or do they look like they're there for one last big payday?
I'd love to comment on Lampard, but he's too busy getting selfies up the Empire State Building and everything else in New York. He's not actually had much time on the pitch. In fact, he's not played for New York City so far this season. He's still got a calf injury. Steven Gerrard, I'm being very disappointed with him, to be honest with you. Not laughing at him as an Evertonian, wanting him to do well as a fan of the league. He's not performed anywhere near what he's probably capable of. I think last season he'd had 2 years of constant football, and at that age it can be difficult, because I think the thing with Major League Soccer is what a lot of people don't appreciate is the fact that the travelling is just incredible. It's 5 and 6 hour flights. It's playing in different time zones. It's playing at altitude. You're all over the place, and that takes its toll. And I think probably Steven Gerrard didn't appreciate that. And I thought he'd had a rest in the winter, and I thought he'd come back strong. His first game kind of passed him by, and he picked up an injury in the third game of the season. So we're waiting for him to come back and really make his mark, I suppose. I think the problem, you've got Pirlo, on the other hand, has been fantastic for New York City this season. He's made a really, really good start to the season for New York City. Ashley Cole's done quite well for LA Galaxy as well. He's over there now. I think what they bring to you is they bring a brand. They bring awareness for the league. But one thing is changing in Major League Soccer, and that is the competitiveness of it. It's not a retirement league. You can't go over there and walk around the pitch because it's very athletic. It's a very strong league. And quite often the best players in MLS aren't these players that, they're not the biggest names. The biggest name to have an impact was Didier Drogba last season when he landed at Montreal Impact. I think he scored 12 goals in 14 games, which was incredible. And he's decided this season 4 of Montreal Impact's first 5 games are on AstroTurf due to the weather up in Montreal. So he's decided not to play on the Astro. So he's only actually played 20 minutes so far for Impact this season. They're going to move back into their stadium over the next couple of weeks, back onto grass. So he will feature again. But like I said, that the best players in MLS aren't the biggest names. And that's, other than probably Sebastian Giovinco, who was obviously ex-Juventus. He's 27. He was the MVP last year. He got 25 goals, I think. And he's been fantastic. But that's the age they're trying to attract now, the 26, 27-year-olds. And if they pay the money, they'll go there. And the league is getting stronger all the time.
So the men's national team of US has struggled a little bit recently. I know they beat Guatemala 4-0. Is there an influx, or is there a pipeline of players that is going to, that due to the MLS, being around quite a bit now, a number of years, is that youth development and youth experience getting into the national team from MLS?
It's a tough one. I think that the American system, and obviously I know you two guys follow the NFL very, very closely, don't you? So you'll be more than aware of this. You're probably more au fait with this than what I am. But the college system obviously takes a lot of kids away, certainly from Major League Soccer. There was something called Adidas Generation X contracts, which some kids got which meant that he could come out of college and take up the soccer career, if you want to use the American term. And then if that didn't work out, could pick their college careers back up. But obviously that's not available to everyone. So there's certainly a gap in the development over some players. But higher up, 23, 24s, it's come down to Jurgen Klinsmann. He's obviously the coach. He has it. There's a lot of players who I feel would strengthen the national side. And he's just reluctant to pick them. He picks older players. He picks players who've played in Europe. And sometimes that works, and other times it doesn't. And there's a feeling, certainly the MLS fans I speak to, and that they're standing still now, and it's too much. There's too much favouritism in terms of older players and his kind of safe players. I suppose we see it, don't we, in England with, we look at players and think, why is X, Y and Z in that England side when, other players are performing for the clubs and should be given a chance. And I think you're probably going to get that all the way through national teams. But I think for the US, there's definitely an importance going forward to develop their own players. And I suppose as the game continues to grow, and it's growing, there's no question about it. As that grows, you would hope that the younger kids come through better technically at football, have a better awareness of it. And if they do that, then they will strengthen. They should be able to put a competitive side out. There's 320 million people in the United States. Soccer's growing. Kids are picking it up. The Premier League's massive over there as well. So there's no reason why there shouldn't be any reason rather why they shouldn't be producing, good players. Maybe not a Lionel Messi yet, but out of all those people, why not? Why not?
Final question, Baz.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned it before, but I'm unfortunately going to bring you back to every Everton fan's favourite subject at the moment, and that is Roberto Martinez and how it's going so far. I think is the best way to thoughts on the season. I suppose my question is, what are your thoughts on the season? Because there's been a lot of positives going forward, especially in Lukaku, but then a lot of negatives at the back, and also, as you alluded to a bit before, style of football.
Yeah, you're right. Going forward, I think that the third top scorers in the Premier League, Everton. We've also got the worst home defensive record in terms of goals conceded. I think it's right up there as well within Europe's top 5 leagues. I don't think many more teams have conceded more goals at home. They've lost 50% of the games at home. So from that point of view, it's been massively frustrating this season. I feel as though we are going backwards, to be honest. I think when Roberto got the job, Everton were an established top 7 side under David Moyes. I think it's only now when you look back at Moyes' record, you realise how established Everton were in that top 7. 5th, 4th, 6th, 5th. You look at the record, it was very good considering he didn't have money either. He had no money. And Roberto came in, and without sounding as like one of those fans who say I told you so, this is on a podcast somewhere. It's quite clearly on our thing as well, is that I didn't want him as the manager for the simple reason that he terrified the life out of me defensively. Wigan had conceded 270 goals in 4 seasons under him, and you'd accept the first couple of seasons trying to get them to play a certain way, but if you're not learning from your mistakes year after year, then you're never going to learn. And 4 seasons should have been enough. This was a man that took Wigan down. Forget the FA Cup, because yes, it's lovely to win a trophy, and I'd love Everton to win the FA Cup this year, but they got relegated, so he was certainly not high on my list of candidates. I wanted, and again, this is on record, so this isn't me blowing my own trumpet, but I wanted Thomas Tuchel, who is now at Borussia Dortmund and turning it up there. He was at Mainz at the time, and was interested in coming to England, and he was one I kind of highlighted. But back to Roberto, he got the job. He came in and he brought an attacking dimension to David Moyes' very pragmatic Everton side at the time. And it fused together brilliantly in that first season, and they missed out on 4th place. They got 72 points, which would have got them in the Champions League the year before and the year after, and definitely this season. But since then, as he got more of a grip on the side, the defensive frailties have crept in, and it's, 3 years is enough in a job, I think, to really be able to get an idea of where someone's going. And I just don't feel as though he pays enough attention. I don't think Everton work hard enough. I don't think Everton are fit enough. They don't defend as a team. He's brought in some really, really good players. Can't criticise him for that. He's done. I described it on Toffee TV the other week. He's 50% brilliant and 50% woeful. And if he could cut the woeful into 25%, we'd have a manager there, But at the moment, I'm quite disillusioned with him. He terrified the life of me in the last game against Arsenal in the second half, because it was the most disorganised I've seen Everton since probably the Walter Smith days in that second half. So it's one of them, isn't it? What do? Do you stick or bust? It's quite worrying. But they could end up finishing 7th or 8th and winning an FA Cup, and we'll say, all right, well, that was a decent season. But if you look deeper, there needs to be some big changes, I think.
I mean, we've chatted here for nearly half an hour, but in the interest of full disclosure, you and I, we used to work together at Everton. Yeah. So we did see we saw some bloody awful Everton teams. The mid to late 90s. I'm thinking the one game that always sticks out is the Nottingham Forest game at home, where they lost 1-0. It was seriously one of the Van Hooijdonk. Yeah, it was one of the worst performances by a football team I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Now, obviously, the disappointment of those days was coming down to the last game of the season and still not being safe. It's not as bad now as then, but I've heard some people say this is the worst Everton team, as you said yourself, the worst Everton team since Smith, Kendall's last go round. Is it that bad, or is it just a little bit of football fan hyperbole?
Yeah, it's not. Listen, you'll talk to one who will say that, and the next they'll tell you it's the best they've seen since '85. So, I had the joy of the '80s, of course, and that's the bar that I set. They're the standards I have for Everton. I think at times Everton are fantastic. I quite fancy them to go to Old Trafford on Sunday and win. I think away from home on the counter-attack, they're very good. I think Everton's problem is they don't know how to play at home. They've got this is bandied around, no plan B. But Everton haven't got a plan B, and that's fact. If a team comes and puts everyone behind the ball, Everton are stumped. Everton are stumped unless they get the first goal and the team has to come out. And they're too soft. So no, it's nowhere near as bad as Walter Smith days and things like that. When I said that before, I said disorganised against Arsenal. No one knew where they were playing, and that to me is a worrying sign. I think when he gets it right, you see in the week before against Chelsea, they were fantastic in the FA Cup. We've seen it at times this season. They've looked brilliant, but Everton are the worst type of side because you don't know what you're getting from them. One week they're brilliant, and the next week they're all over the place. He's got a collection of very, very good players. At the moment, doesn't seem to be able to find the formula in which to use them, and in some respects, that's probably the most worrying thing of all.
Well, Baz, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it. As we said, catch Baz on Toffee TV and the MLS show. Thanks a lot for your time, Baz.
Cheers, lads.
Well, that was the brilliant Barry Castead talking Johan Cruyff, Major League Soccer, and the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I probably should have mentioned earlier that the tenuous link I have there to Barry is he was my mentor, as it were, at Everton. He took me. He took this miserable, confidence lacking 15-year-old and turned him into a miserable, arrogant 35-year-old, which I am now.
I mean, it sounds like punishment, though. What we're going to do, Neil, at 15 is make you watch Walter Smith games on a loop.
I did get paid.
You'd have to pay me a lot to watch a Walter Smith game. Do you know what I mean? You know.
Seriously, though, we did touch on it. Some of those games, some of those Everton teams with the likes of Tony Thomas at right back and Gareth Fadley at centre mid. Jesus wept.
I mean, I understand. I literally do understand the frustration of Everton fans of Roberto Martinez. I completely understand it. But let's not forget. That's all we're saying. Let's not forget. You know, I understand that it's not Moyes, but you all hated Moyes for being boring. You need like some kind of combo Moyes Martinez triumphant, and then you've got the perfect manager, I guess.
It's as he says, you know, if he could cut the 50% woeful to 25% woeful, added 50% good, Everton are flying.
Oh, absolutely, Dalton, absolutely. Well, this isn't an Everton podcast, thank God. And we're just going to move swiftly on to our next interview, Dalton, as it's that kind of busy week. So let's get Liz Loza on the line from sunny LA and see how she's been doing in the off-season and what she thinks of the season coming up in the world of fantasy NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch is the brilliant Liz Loza, fancy football guru on Yahoo, and a lady who would rather dress as Ryan Sandberg than a princess. Liz, how are we today?
I am well, and thank you for that oddly apt introduction. I appreciate it.
What we will say is that is off the Backyard Banter podcast that Liz did with friends of the show, Matt Harmon. What we will also say is if you've listened to that podcast, there will be no mention of sucking toes for the rest of the show.
You know, I've gotten a lot of tweets about the toe sucking bit, but I was just mentioning it to illustrate that the hate tweets that I get are very different than perhaps my male counterparts in the industry.
I was in work when I heard it. The T over the computer laptop meant that I may get an email from my boss later in the week.
Listen, I'm sorry, but I'm glad I could brighten your day. I hope that you don't get some sort of tech notice.
No, I'm the tech guy, so it's not necessarily an issue.
Well, I'm not even sure though that it is a hate tweet. That's the confusing thing in my. I'm trying to work out if I ever got a tweet saying that how I'd react to it. So it's a confusing one.
You're right. It's not like he was like, I can't believe you told me to start Frank Gore and he hurt himself, or like he didn't produce. It was just in general. Yo, I want to suck your toes. What do you think of Brandon LaFell this week?
I just don't need to move on. Don't we're doing what we said we absolutely wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Liz, off-season time. The question we've got is, what have you been up to? We have noticed that one of those things is daily fantasy ice hockey.
Yes. Now, is ice hockey, I don't believe it's particularly popular in the UK.
It is. It's more popular in mainland Europe than it is in the UK. It's not. It's in the UK. It's more seen as, wow, here's a YouTube video of two guys who seem to be playing hockey, then throw their sticks down, and refs let them fight for 10 minutes, but we're not really sure why.
Happens. Yeah. So I have been doing a lot of daily fantasy hockey. I enjoy it. Hockey is actually a sport that I know and hold dear. I was a competitive figure skater growing up. I believe your famous Robin Cousins is the famous British figure skater. So for that audience, I am neither a man nor have I gone to the Olympics, but I did skate competitively as a young woman, and as such, I would share ice time with the hockey players because the rink I went to only had one center ice. So we'd go in and out in shifts, if you will, with the hockey players. So I learned the game pretty quickly, and then Yahoo asked me if during the off season, in addition to doing off season football, free agency reaction, and now draft prep, if I'd also add hockey to my repertoire, and I gladly agreed. It's been really fun. The regular season does end, I believe, for fantasy this week. So this is the last week that you can play daily as we'll head into the Stanley Cup playoffs for the NHL, but it's been a blast. And if you guys are getting interested in daily, certainly next season, I can maybe do a couple quick primers. I'm interested to watch the Dallas game tonight, the Dallas Stars game, because that I think is the game that's going to pay pretty high dividends from a daily fantasy perspective.
So the only thing I know about hockey is I listen to the Tony Kornheiser show, which is comes from obviously Washington, and he just describes the Capitals, who are the best team in the NHL. I believe they've won the President's Cup. See, I even know some stuff. He just describes them as choking dogs. So I'm looking forward to his rant when they eventually lose in the playoffs.
Oh, well, I wish you wouldn't say that, because my husband is a giant Capitals fan and I am a Chicago Blackhawks fan, and the Blackhawks just won the Cup. They've actually won the Cup a lot in the past 3 years. I believe they've won 3 Cups in the past 6 years. So my husband's really hoping that the Caps don't play what is referred to here in the States as European hockey into the playoffs. And that's part of the reason that they end up, for lack of a better word, choking, is because there's just a different finesse to the game in Europe. They don't get as physical. And so when a lot of the scrappier Americans are playing near the net in the playoffs, they just play with more physicality, and the Europeans tend to be a little put off by it, taken aback by it, though Alex Ovechkin, Ovi, is certainly not a non-physical player, so I don't think the Caps are going to quite have that choking dog problem that they have perhaps in previous seasons.
I mean, saying that, the Europeans don't have, they aren't prepared to have the physical game. The only hockey I've ever played was, it wasn't ice hockey, it was on our tarmac playground at school, and we didn't have pads, and we didn't have helmets, and basically we just had Caesar swinging hockey sticks. So I think these people could mix it as much as anyone in the physicality stakes.
There's just a different style of play, It's like the Redcoats and the Minutemen. Like there's just it's referred to as European hockey. I have a dear friend who played in Sweden actually, and the Europeans are better hockey players. There's more finesse to their game. Their sticking is better. They're just not as brutish. Although when you look at soccer, obviously, I mean, maybe actually the Brits would be quite good at hockey, because y'all are some brutes when it comes to soccer.
This is what surprises me, that you're suggesting that it's a fight with sticks. So I'm unsure. Maybe it's basically because we don't get enough ice. I think that may be the issue. It's a weather issue, Liz, more than anything else.
Maybe, but again, this is mainland Europe versus the UK, so
true.
Anyway,
you mentioned that you've been doing some work with, looking at rookies, and the joy of watching, was it 3 or 4 hours of Dak Prescott, for example. Are there any, for what you've looked at, are there any rookies who you think could come in and have whatever team they landed on could have an immediate impact from a fantasy point of view?
There are certainly a few of those rookies this year. Now, I am the type of analyst who, right now I'm working on a profile for Leonte Carrou. He's a wide receiver coming out of Rutgers. And over the past 2 weeks for Yahoo at yahoo.sports.com, or sports.yahoo.com, my bad, I've been doing an under-the-radar rookie profile. So I've been watching a lot of tape on guys that are more long-term prospects and aren't those common names. That said, so that's kind of where my headspace is at the moment. That said, Ezekiel Elliott is the best running back coming out of this draft class. He is exceptional, and he will absolutely make a giant impact. There's not really anything wrong. You can't even find anything wrong with his game. The only thing you could potentially say is that he's a little cocky. Oh, a football player, cocky, are you kidding me? And he threw his coach under the bus for not giving him the ball enough. So I guess you could say that he just likes winning too much, and they should have given him the ball more. So Ezekiel Elliott is someone that you definitely want to watch and see where he lands for the running back position. I think the wide receivers, now this class of wide receivers doesn't have a lot of quote, tall receivers over 6 feet tall. It's a shorter class, lots of these speedy slot type guys, which obviously produce in a different way than those TD machines, those deep threats in the red zone that can just jump up, climb the ladder, and high point the ball. So those guys, you've got Corey Coleman. He's an incredible athlete. He's one of those shorter guys, but might have the ability to play outside and in the slot because of his incredible athleticism. He's someone you want to watch. Sterling Shepard, another one of those. He's just a technician, but a smaller slot guy. So those two are like nicer, small, like really their technique is brilliant, and Coleman's athleticism is fantastic. On the taller end, my favorite receiver in this draft class is I prefer the taller receivers because they get you the touchdowns. And it's hard to estimate after the catch ability, right? So it's hard to count on that all of the time because you don't know what kind of coverage they're going to see. So Josh Doxson coming out of Texas Christian University, TCU, I think is incredible. He just looks awesome. His hops are incredible. His vertical is just really special. And I like his hands. So he's someone. Laquan Treadwell is another guy that heading into the combine, a lot of people had thought was sort of the consensus number one receiver. The problem with Treadwell, so the good stuff, super physical, great hands. I mean, he plays angry. He comps similarly to Dez Bryant. But he's not fast. He declined to run the 40-yard dash at the combine. He instead ran it at his pro day. He ran I think a 4.6, so not great. He doesn't have that second gear that a lot of those elite receivers have. So that's really the knock against him. Now, I don't know, and I don't think that speed can be taught. I think you're given it by God or the universe or whatever celestial being you do or do not believe in, but it's a hard thing to teach. So that'll be interesting. I do think Treadwell, though, I love his physicality, and I think his love of the game is such that he'll find ways to adjust his style of play to maybe compensate for the lack of speed. So he's another guy you definitely want to keep an eye on. And Nick Fuller ran the fastest 40 time at the combine. He's a guy out of Notre Dame. He had a lot of drops in college, and his hands also measure very small. So he's someone that even though he ran really quickly and had this great combine, I'm not as high on because I just don't feel I feel like there's a direct correlation between the hands and the drops, and maybe people roll their eyes and think that that's simplistic, but the same knock was made of, granted, a different position, but Amir Abdullah coming into last season, and he, super fast, little ping pong, but kind of small, little hands, had a fumble issue in college, and then we saw that again happen at the next level. So I'm not as high on Nick Fuller as some people. I'm also not as much of a workout warrior, metrics, fiend as other people in the space. I like what I see, and that kind of determines a lot for me. Leonte Carroo, this guy that I'm studying right now out of Rutgers, I haven't fleshed out my entire argument, but he's someone that I think comps similarly to Roddy White. He'd be a number 2 wide receiver. A lot of people are really in love with his metrics, but on tape, I'm still watching the tape. So, this might be a bit premature. I'm just not seeing the deep speed and the overall physicality. He's a great hands catcher, but he's not a guy who high points the ball. He's barely under 6 feet tall. He claims to play like a receiver who's 6'5", but I don't think he has those kind of hops. So I'm not as high on him as other people, but those are a couple of names. And then just to go back to the running backs, Kenneth Dixon is someone you should keep an eye on. I feel like he could end up very easily in Miami, and it's no surprise because he comps similarly to Lamar Miller. A lot of tread on the tires. He was used a ton in college at Louisiana Tech, but he is a great pass catcher out of the backfield, struggles a little bit through the tackles, likes to bounce everything outside. I think Miami could use him as, a 1-2 punch with Jay Ajayi. If he doesn't go to Miami, I think Miami might focus on a guy named Keith Marshall out of Georgia. He's someone actually that's under the radar. That's an under the radar running back that I think could do really, really well. He was a teammate of Todd Gurley's, and then he hurt himself. So he was, not in the mix due to injury, and then he was buried under just a Nick Chubb and Todd Gurley at Georgia, so he wasn't able to work his way back into the good graces of the coaching staff. But then at the combine, he did fantastically well. He is fast and strong. not a ton of burst, but I like him a lot, and I think that he's someone that people are overlooking. So I would track him too, because I think he's going to be one of those, in my projection, like a mid-season surprise who doesn't maybe start initially, but come after enough of the injuries start to pile up and we're all calling our waiver wire, he's going to get a shot, and I think he'll be able to take it.
I mean, speaking, I don't know if speed can be taught. I'm speaking as I'm not one of nature's sprinters, but if there's a buffet 5 yards away, I'm beating you to it.
Well, you and Eddie Lacy then.
He's the only person I'd worry about.
Eddie Lacy, and if the story of Trent Richardson's true, then Trent as well. So maybe it's just an Alabama running back story of they love food.
Well, there's also Derrick Henry, who's in this draft class, since we're talking about rookies really quickly. He's another Alabama running back, and he is a freak of nature. He's giant and fast, and you can't believe it, but he's 6'2", and I don't even know how, 200 whatever pounds, and his ability to lift and speed is so much greater than a man of that size should be. But he obviously, therefore, because of his pure volume, has trouble with lateral agility, moving back and forth, quick cuts. He's one of those running backs that, like, when he gets going, when he finds the hole, you are going to get run over. Just completely like a bulldozer or steamroller type of player. But this is the NFL, and the offensive line is not always on par to that of Alabama's, and we've seen plenty of Alabama running backs come out with that straight line speed, but they've just not been able to find the hole because they haven't been able to juke or slither their way into it. And if the hole doesn't open up because the line is shuffling, which happens so much in the NFL, or isn't an elite Dallas-esque type of line, then those guys end up losing yardage for you. So Derrick Henry, to me, if he seems kind of heavy, I don't know, like, I'm not as high on him. I think his fantasy in particular value is going to be very dependent upon the line he is running behind.
So we've gone positive for 10 minutes there, Liz. So we need to bring it back to reality and get a bit more negative. Me and Tom's favourite subjects. So there's a lot of free agencies happened, a lot of high profile defensive moves, obviously, but there's been a lot of offensive moves as well. Which ones have you hated?
Well, for fantasy?
Yeah, for both. But for fantasy specific,
I really don't like TJ Yeldon and Chris Ivory sharing touches in Jacksonville. That doesn't make me happy one bit. It's a bummer because TJ Yeldon, no, he didn't get a lot of touchdowns, but he also, I think that was more dependent on the coaching choices in the red area of the field. Now, whether that was because the coaching staff didn't feel that he was durable enough to take the goal line, then that could be, you could look at that either way. It's like either the coaches didn't use him properly or the coaches didn't use him that way because they didn't think that he could get the job done. Regardless, we know that Chris Ivory is a goal line vulture and we know that he's going to get those TDs. But I think that these two guys are now going to be in an even 10 to 14 touch timeshare. So that's a pretty big bummer. Give me some more names because my brain is swirling.
Mohamed Sanu
to the Falcons, I think, is an interesting move. I think a lot of people are pretty down on Sanu. He did drop the ball a lot. What was that, 2014 when AJ, he did drop a ball. I think he led all receivers in drops that season. But when AJ Green was hurt, Sanu really, really stepped up. So I think that he's going to be a guy that will probably people don't believe in. There's a recency bias, but it's also my only hesitation about him is that the Falcons also have Justin Hardy out of East Carolina, who projects to be like one of those high volume slot receivers. So I want to see how those targets sprinkle out. But I think that Mohamed Sanu has better value than the rest of the. I'm higher on him than the rest of the community is right now.
Brock Osweiler.
Oh, Brock Osweiler. I mean, the Texans needed to do something, right? Like that is. Congrats. I looked back at some Brock Osweiler tape, and granted, there's not like a ton to review. The sample size is very small, and there were moments that he looked great and made really good decisions. And there are other moments that he nearly got. I remember one play he nearly got Benny Fowler killed. So I don't think that you're going to see some big change under center. I do think that the most positive thing about Brock Osweiler going to the Texans is that I do think it is good for DeAndre Hopkins and whatever receiver emerges as the number 2 option there, because there is some consistency now. If you remember, and if you watched Hard Knocks, you know that Bill O'Brien wasn't able to sell the quarterback to the locker room until we were, a couple of weeks into the season, and that's a problem. Like, you got to sell everybody on who the leader, who the signal caller for the team is, and now what he can do is win over the locker room, get everyone hyped around this guy, and at least have the positive energy around him instead of, you never want your players to start questioning your decisions, right? And if you don't know what the answer is, if you're not decisive in making that decision, then everyone around you gets a little bit nervous. So I think that's like the one benefit. They know who the guy is. There's no competition. Let's move forward. Do I think that he's like much more talented, especially given the wage that he is now being given, than Brian Hoyer? Nope. But there should be fewer distractions.
The opposite of that is the situation in Philadelphia, Liz. I am on record with Dutton as saying I expect Chase Daniel to be the quarterback by week 4 if Sam Bradford's the starter right at week 1. Should we be looking at Chase Daniel? Because I know a lot of scouts like him. Do fantasy scouts like him as much if he's going to get starts?
Straight up honest, have not watched a lick of Chase Daniel tape. Just not on my list of to-dos. My priority list, I'm going to watch some Real Housewives on Bravo before I check that out. And the reason is, not to be a jerk, but the reason is there's so much depth at quarterback that unless you're playing in some sort of 2-quarterback or super flex league, this is not on the radar for me. There are plenty of other quarterbacks that I think, even the rookies coming out, like Jared Goff, is probably going to get a starting job and probably be drafted ahead of Chase Daniel. And I don't know enough rosters that are so deep that you can afford in a start 1 quarterback league to stash a backup. So, he's just not one of my priorities.
Unless you're playing San Diego every week, there's no point starting Chase Daniel, because that's when he comes to play. Week 17 v San Diego, he's your boy.
There you go. I will agree with that analysis wholeheartedly.
So moving away from fantasy, we come to your team, the Bears. Bit of a more quiet, more subdued off-season than more recent ones. No one's mentioning... I've not seen many articles saying, questioning the future of Jay Cutler, which is a bit odd because it seems that I've read that every year for the last 6 years. How do you see the 2016 team going forward, and are there any players who you'd like the team to draft?
Oh, well, Matt Forte leaving for the Jets was interesting. I don't think Matt Forte's fantasy value, just as an aside, is improved by going to the Jets at all, especially since Bilal Powell was re-signed, and Bilal Powell had the most receptions between weeks 11 and 16 of any running back that was active. And also they added Kyrie Robinson, who's basically a poor man's Chris Ivory, a bit of a bruiser. So whether he's being used as insurance because of Forte's age, who knows? He's only on a 1-year prove it. But just as a side note, I'm not particularly... I wouldn't be drafting Matt Forte high. I don't think this Brandon Marshall Forte reunion, at least from a fantasy perspective, is a big win for the former Bear. As for the current makeup of the Bears, I'm really excited to see what Kevin White can do. I loved him as a high draft pick last season. He did lose his entire rookie season, and he did enter the league as a, quote, older rookie, but he's healthy, and I feel like this could be a year. He's also under the radar because people forgot that he existed. Like, he was drafted, and then he never played, and he was hurt with those shin splints right away, so I'm excited to see what he can do. I like him and Alshon Jeffrey as the outside options if Alshon Jeffrey can also stay healthy. So durability is a big concern for the team. Zach Miller. That was the other one. Zach Miller, the tight end. I think that he has really nice fantasy value. I like him a lot as a re-signing. Get rid of Martellus Bennett. Save that money. Use Zach Miller. So big props there. And Jeremy Langford from Michigan State, he's another guy that, like, you know, in small sample size had some question marks, but there's also CJ Anderson, who was given a small sample size, and we decided we liked because he ended on 2 high notes, but was fantasy poison for the first half of last year. And people want to say, like, yes, he was hurt or working through injuries, or the offensive line in Denver hadn't been fully fleshed out yet. That's all true, but I think if you're going to use that argument for CJ Anderson, then you also have to give Jeremy Langford the similar benefit of the doubt. So I am excited about Langford and his fantasy potential. Jay Cutler's just Jay Cutler. Like, he's too expensive to move. He's my quarterback. I feel like Terrell Owens about it. Like, this is my quarterback. Stop saying bad stuff about him, you know? I'm a little concerned to see what happens without Adam Gase there, because Gase was able to, although this is something that Coach Fox can do, slow down the pace of the game. And, you know, Jay Cutler gets a little flustered quick. So he was able to eliminate a lot of his mistakes with the pace of the game. So I'd like to see more of that. And, you know, from an offensive standpoint, I'd like to see us draft a running back that's more of a bruising running back to complement Langford. That doesn't help for fantasy, but if I'm being selfish, I'd like to see, you know, one of those goal line vultures, a bigger guy. Josh Ferguson's not that guy, but he is an interesting prospect, and he's out of University of Illinois. So he's someone that I wouldn't mind being added. But otherwise, I'm pretty... how greedy can I get? Like, do I want one of those spectacular slot guys? Yes, but we've got Kevin White and Alshon Jeffrey. So I think offensively, like, drafting depth versus immediate starters is kind of where the Bears are at. And I don't really like this class of quarterbacks enough for me to want the Bears to take one of these top 2 to 4 guys to develop behind Jay Cutler. So, you know, this isn't the year that I'm like, oh, let's get, like, I love Paxton Lynch, but I don't know if I want Paxton Lynch developing behind Jay Cutler, and I don't think Paxton Lynch is a guy who can make an immediate impact come September.
There's a quiet confidence, Dutton. I don't know if you can hear it in Liz's voice regarding the Bears 2016 season. I like it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that confidence.
I do sense we're about 2 minutes away from her starting singing "Bear Down" on us.
We stunned the nation with our eye formation. So the thing about the Bears is, like, this is the best time to be a Bears fan because there's nothing at stake, right? Like, last year I was like, I'm a Bears fan. All right. We beat the Packers on Thanksgiving. That was my Super Bowl. Good and good. I'm done.
It's more than I had.
It's more than any team.
Do you guys celebrate Thanksgiving, by the way? Maybe not. It wasn't as, maybe that doesn't resonate as much.
We celebrate Thanksgiving because there's 3 games on the telly. We're still in work, or don't you usually take it off, right?
I do, and I get really funny looks when they say, "What are you taking that Thursday off for?" And I say, "It's Thanksgiving," and they just go, "Okay."
We usually take it off to watch Detroit get beat, to hope Dallas get beat, and then fall asleep before the late game at 2:00 in the morning.
That's pretty much it.
That's awesome.
Liz,
that's awesome.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Oh, that's it. That's it. We're out.
We're gonna leave you to it, and we're gonna let you get back to the sunny Los Angeles, I hope, which is much better than freezing cold United Kingdom. Although no ice for our work on daily hockey. But I think before we have you on next time, Liz, me and Neil promise to do some research and be able to name at least 10 NHL players of note.
That would be awesome. If you could do 10 goalies, that would be even better.
I can give you Patrick Roy, spelt Roy. That's about it. Dutton, you got any?
No, I do own a throwback 1925 Pittsburgh Pirates jumper. That's my hockey claim to fame.
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Dutton. Pirates, a baseball team. Dutton,
Yeah.
Dutton, you're making this. Dutton, we're going to have to go before we embarrass ourselves any further on American sports.
No problem, you guys.
Liz,
Liz,
thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I always love being on. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Liz Loza _FF, and be sure to check out sports.yahoo.com. Bye, boys.
Cheers, Liz. Thank you. Well, Neil, that was the brilliant Liz Loza there, and you only embarrassed us 30 minutes into the call. Well done.
Well, I thought it's like I say, I don't want to go off early. I want to reel people in, and then I'll do it.
There's a classic phrase, don't which is stay in your lane. Your lane is American football, not American sports. So we're going to have to go and study NHL goalies. I'm just not. It's just not a sport for me. Have you tried to watch it?
I have.
I can't get into it. But we'll try. We'll try so we can at least prove to Liz that we live up to our promises.
Bear in mind, you're the same person who I can't remember if it was with Patrick Doherty or was Mr. Grant. You asked me to name 3 MLB players, and I knocked you up the park.
So okay then. Well, your challenge is 10 NHL goalies, and see if you can name if they play for the Phoenix Coyotes, the Chicago Blackhawks, or the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I do know
all 3 teams, by the way.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Flyers never have a good goalie.
I can't believe how much we've talked about sport. As my fiance will quite rightly point out, no one wants to listen to sport that long. But guess what? You've had to, and this has been Waxing Lyrical. Get used to it.
And it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.